Good morning. Welcome to the Reexamining the Theoretical Practices of Social Work. As I share my presentation here with you, my name is Morgan Zachmeyer, and I'd like to welcome you to Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge is a city full of culture, amazing people, and amazing food. And just as Baton Rouge is filled with all these amazing things, social work must be focused on theoretical foundations. Theories are science-based and they are proven, and so this is important because people need help on things that are proven. If we just help people based on our knowledge, we aren't necessarily scientists, although I'm sure some of you are. So we use these theories that I'm about to mention, the cognitive developmental theories, the psychosocial theory, and the psychoanalytic or psychosexual theory, for example. The first one I'd like to mention is both Jean Piaget's and Lev Vygotsky's theories of cognitive development. Although both different, they are based on the same principles. Piaget came up with 4 different developmental stages, starting with sensory motor intelligence, ending in formal operational thought. He noted that formal operational thought does not translate into everybody, as this stage is based on formal rules and laws that help govern our thinking and why we should or shouldn't do some things. And as you know, some people do end up in jail for doing things or break rules and face consequences. He also focused on the fact that people strive toward equilibrium, which means that we try to balance conflicts with the good things that are going on in our life to help us not only resolve these conflicts, but to help cope, I guess, in these situations. Lev Vygotsky focused more on the cultural aspects of cognitive development and saying that the different cultures and individuals around does shape things like inner thoughts and the zone of proximal development. Inner thoughts are developed after an infant learns to communicate with the people around them without using words. And inner thoughts are, of course, that little voice inside your head that helps you figure out problems and helps you talk through things in order to solve them. The zone of proximal development is the idea that the people you surround yourself with helps either build your intelligence or even diminish it in some cases. If you surround yourself with people that are scholarly and have a higher knowledge than you do, you will yourself eventually become even more knowledgeable or even rise to their level. This is related to Erikson's psychosocial theory, my next theory that I will examine, because the psychosocial theory also examines different aspects of cognitive development and how they may help or hinder an individual. However, the psychosocial theory also includes the psychological processes, the biological, and the societal. Erik Erikson came up with 8 different stages of development from infancy to elderhood and what happens at each of those stages. These stages all have conflicts, and these conflicts must be resolved in order to successfully go to the next stage without having issues with those same conflicts as one ages. Newman and Newman, the author of the textbook that I'm using to inform my speech, also added 3 additional stages. And it's important to note that stages will be altered or added as we evolve, because one of the stages, for example, is elderhood, which is ages 75 and beyond. This was not possible, let alone in the 1600s when people wouldn't live very long, but not even a century ago was this the case. And Erikson developed many essential theories to social work practice. The different aspects of our life interact with each other to make the person that we are today. And that is why the Newman and Newman textbook that I'm basing my speech off of is influenced by that. It is also related to psychosexual theory, my next theory, by Sigmund Freud, because it examines the ego qualities. Ego not necessarily being, oh, I'm so awesome, look at me, but it's the concept of oneself. And Sigmund Freud expanded on this by saying that the ego or self was composed of 3 parts. You have the id, which is the unconscious part, as you see in this glacier picture in the middle here, and that is what holds the sexual and aggressive desires each one of us experiences. It is held in our unconscious. We don't know it's there until we exude that. Then you have the superego, which is the extreme opposite of the id. It seeks to be that perfection that society wants, that follows rules, does everything right, and holds up to everyone's standards. Lastly, the ego is there to be the mediator between the id and the superego. The ego says, I can satisfy these sexual and aggressive desires, but do it in an acceptable way. or behind closed doors, for example, or through exercise to get my aggression out. And as you can see here, Freud did have 5 different developmental stages, as these end at adolescence. So it starts at the oral stage when one is born, and of course, everything is oral. When they suck a bottle, when they eat, and they're all assisted by things. It lastly ends at the genital stage in adolescence, where of course one is developing sexually and throughout their body. And at each one of these stages, a conflict arises, and if this is not successfully resolved, then these different methods of repression or regression, for example, develop. Regression meaning you go back to an earlier stage, repression meaning you push down issues that have arisen. And throughout my speech, I hope you've understood that these different theories do have strengths and weaknesses. They all have cracks in them, and because of this, it's even more of a reason that we need to use multiple of them at once. For example, if you use the psychosexual theory, the psychosocial theory can come in and fill those cracks, the cement per se, to help tie it all together and really use it in social work practice. Every single one of these theories have implications for our practice because they explain different aspects of a client's problems that they might be having.